Hi, this is Dorothy Mae Mercer for Julia Widup Productions of Authors and Publishers Speak. Tonight we have a wonderful guy by the name of Phillip Cotton who has a book about racing. I haven't read this book and I know very little about it, so I think we're going to learn in a moment. Let me introduce you to Phillip. Hi, Phillip. How are you?
Hi, Dorothy. Doing great today. Thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome. It's great to have you here. So explain this.
All righty. So I grew up in a regular middle-class neighborhood and bicycles and running from the police. I even got chased down by us driving. But basically, I had a hard time being with myself. I guess nowadays call it attention disorder. Of course, when I was growing up, there weren't any disorders. It was just that someone had a lot of.
You were just being a boy.
I wrote this book. That's right. That's right. And I had just the amount of trauma growing up that I had to learn to grow, and it was good. My parents were wonderful. My was very assertive. My mom was very sweet. It's the perfect set of parents for someone's development. The name of the book, Racing to Enlightenment, is it starts out with me running from myself, and then eventually I end up in addiction, and I'm out looking for a new girlfriend, and I find my way into a spiritual community. And I have an awakening in of all things. Well, there's lots of twists and turns in between, of course. Do you have any questions about this story?
Go on, tell me more.
Okay. So I go to this. I had a girlfriend that used to forget to come back from the store. And I really had a hard time with that. My heart would race whenever she didn't show up. It was very difficult for me. And I really deeply cared about her, but I could see that this wasn't really going to be an experience for me. It wasn't getting any better. So I decided to go out to search for a new relationship, and I would look in the newspaper and look for places that women would go, because I wasn't going to meet women so much fixing cars at the tow yard and that sort of thing. Back on the motorcycles, not so much, or the kind of women I wanted to meet weren't there. And I really was a fairly sensitive individual. I figured I wanted to meet a woman that was more sensuous. But what better relationship compatibility class I was taking. And I met this cute gal, and she said that she couldn't go out with me unless I was interested in particular spiritual community. And being the dog that I was, I said that I was interested. Not that and I was not. I lied. I said I was interested. These sittings, an old-headed guy. Yeah. I would go to the sittings in a nation called Waking Down, is the name of the organization. And the guy that runs it, his name is Samuel, with an N, Samuel Bonder. So I go to these sittings, and Samuel speaks in a very, very evolved Harvard English with some Sanskrit. And neither of these kind of languages could I follow at all, and I would accept. So me sleeping at the sitting, raising my hand constantly, asking questions as to what he was describing, because I didn't understand any of these processes he was discussing very, very well. But lo and behold, in my state of depression, I wasn't going to work. I owed a mantra to business in a way it needed, the kind of attention it needed. Well, I noticed after going to these sittings, there wasn't anything that I heard that really sparked anything in me, but I would just go to these sittings, and sometimes I'd listen, sometimes I'd fall asleep. I noticed that I was able to go to work again, and I had a lot more capacity. I didn't understand why. I didn't understand what these people were doing. That was challenging. So I eventually processed because it seemed to be serving me very well. And And eventually, my own development took me away from this particular woman because I realized that I wanted to grow past what was happening in that relationship. But anyway, this woman was really good at setting goals, and she had said to me one day that she didn't want to be with me unless he knew himself as consciousness, which I didn't understand what that meant. But nonetheless, I was open to whatever that was. So she actually gave me a deadline to find myself as consciousness. Now, in this community, most of these folks had a long history of going to ashrams in India, the guru, and all those things, and they're finding their way into this waking down. And I went from, I didn't feel like I fit in so much. Nonetheless, I was welcome there. So she gives me this deadline to find myself as consciousness, and I asked her if she had any stories of other people that had had this happen to them, and she produced a few stories of these other people that had done this. Actually, these stories are now written about in a book called The Second Birth by Bob Valine with a V. He also wrote a book called Into the Fire, and he actually included my story in both of his books because my story was so different than the standard ashram guru story. Oh. So she gives me this deadline, and part of this process in waking down is really just learning how to open up and allow the emotions to flow and the crying and that sort of thing. Which, of course, as a man, I had been very skillful in suppressing all of those things. And I was always hog. Exactly. All in due time, right? So I'm driving the tow truck one day after reading these stories, and I've been in that community about 2 years now. And I'm in the tow truck, and I come to a stop sign, and this is in Mill Valley here in California, Highway 1. And I come to the stop sign, and things were very different. Before I got to that stop sign, my mind was very busy, and I would be talking to myself, basically, or being in my head, as they call it, and just constant. I mean, it didn't stop. Every waking moment was thinking about how to do things differently or better, or what I should have done, could have done. It was just, nauseating the amount of thoughts that went through my brain. I mean, it was good, but it was also a bit much. But when I got to the stop sign in the tow truck, my mind was quiet, and I realized that something was very different. And I didn't know what it was. I was reaching for the heater control. I thought, well, too hot in the truck, and then I realized as I was right that no, it wasn't that warm in the truck. And then I thought, well, maybe the radio, and I was, unconsciously reaching for the radio, like the music was, but it wasn't. It was some music that I loved. And then I realized it was nothing to do with the truck. That whatever was going on inside of me, not outside. And my first impression, pull over and park this tow truck because I have a car on the hook and I've got to get on the freeway, and I was not in a standard state of consciousness. I was in an altered state of consciousness. I didn't do any drugs or drink, but this was a very different way of being than I'd ever experienced before. And I wanted to park the truck, like I said, but that wasn't convenient. I was the only one on call that day, and I couldn't do that. So I called this woman, and I, of course, got her answering machine. And I didn't get her, and I'm just going to be very careful and make sure and just, get back, which was about 6 miles away. There's some folks must not have looked right, but they didn't seem to, and finally got a hold of the gal, and she said, "Oh, you're having a witness awakening." And I go, "Oh, okay." Well, it was very interesting. It was like being behind myself or up on a tether on a kite, kind of looking through my own eyes, like I was watching my own movie. It felt very separate. It was very easy to be in this place, and it was very blissful, and nothing was really cool where I should, but still, it was never been in my life. And I really kind of invoked to the universe that I wanted to be really back in my body. I wanted to have a deeper experience of being here, because this was a little bit, it'd be like if someone constantly inebriated or something. I never really liked being out. So the universe heard my plea and put me back in my body, and I now understood why I had head or out of my body. And it was all that emotional pain that was stacked up in my body from either past lives or for this life, I don't know what. But all these really deep emotions were pouring out that I had not had access to. But I noticed that there would be some bliss, some deeper level of bliss every time that I would go through these emotions. So this has been going on now. That happened in just the day after Thanksgiving in 2001. I've been getting these deeper states over time. And it's been an interesting Well, somewhere line about a year after, yeah, it was very interesting.
There?
All in the book.
Racing to Enlightenment.
A lot. There's a little about police, road racing, and all these relations, and building my business, and also to read. Well, a year after I had this awakening, I was up working on an orchard, and I was working on a water pump, and I was soaking wet, and I was running it and turning it on and off. And I reached over to shut this pump off, and I reached down to grab it, and it was the electricity was still somehow getting to this pump, and it locked my hand on the pump. And the first thing that came to mind was I had thought through my life that whenever I got stuck on electrical charges like this that didn't have free will, I would let go. I realized at the moment that it wasn't a matter of my free will. This was an electrobiochemical muscle contraction. I don't know if those were the words I used at the time, but I got that I didn't have any control over this muscle through my brain. And I started looking around, and I remembered reading somewhere that if you touch anything with the other hand, that it would go through your heart and kill you. So I didn't do that immediately. So I looked at this building I'm in, and it was a metal building. I knew that was an option, but it wasn't my. Then I was pondering on how I missed my life, and that this was likely my life was going to end at this point. And if I had to do all over again, I've worked so hard for this future event of dying at a young age of 39 or 40, and I was really really frustrated in that moment. Like, wow, this really sucks.
So what happened?
And then I got myself on the floor, and with my strong cycling legs, I pushed away from this water tank, and it pulled the wire out of its socket, and I got loose of this thing. And I felt, since that day, in 2002, I am just very thankful. It's like free time, and anything we get for a day is a gift for me. And I just have gratitude from that moment on, that I just appreciate being here. It's not important about how great things are going in business or health or what. I'm just so happy to be here. I'm so thankful. And the awakening didn't change much in my life. It changed a lot internally. And getting changed, I went out and I looked at everything, my relationship, the business, the place. It's changed everything, and continue to. It really forced me to focus on what things I was doing because it was convenient, and what things I wanted to change in my life. Yeah, it's a very wild ride. What that was.
Yes. And you've written about it in this book. Let me tell you.
Right.
I want to say this. For some reason, you're breaking up a lot, and I wanted to hear your story. It's breathtaking. But it's possible that after we do this, you'll want to record again. And I don't know whether it's a different computer or what. What makes it break up?
This is an iPad. It may not have communication abilities, so we could try it on a PC.
Yeah. Then you gotta try a different computer. How many computers?
Next time, yes.
How many choices do you have?
I think there's